and because it's about the right to record matters of public interest, which is being protected.
I simply want to note that midterm elections are in less than a year. There will be new presidential elections in less than 3 years. The statute of limitations for violations of federal law is 5 years. And while this administration may not hold anyone accountable, I guarantee you a future administration will. Yes. So thank you for not bending the knee, not yielding.
There is a clock ticking in Washington. It is a clock that measures the statute of limitations. A guarantee has been issued, not by a commentator, but by a vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus. The guarantee is simple. The immunity you think you have does not exist. The power you think is absolute is temporary. And when the power fades, the law remains. We are looking at the evidence today, and the evidence points to a reckoning. We begin tonight with a judgment on authority and the abuse of that authority. The current administration operates under a projection of strength. They project an image of absolute control. They project the idea that their actions, specifically regarding immigration enforcement and the deployment of federal agents, are beyond the reach of consequence. They project the idea that they can operate in secrecy and that the American people have no choice but to submit. That is a false projection. The administration acts as though they have the support of the people. They act as though their mandate allows for the violation of constitutional rights in the name of security. They act as though the agents they deploy are untouchable. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of record. When an administration believes it can suspend the rules of basic humanity and the rules of the United States Constitution, they are operating on a fundamental lie. The judgment tonight is that this administration has lost the public. Here, play this clip.
Abraham Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. The Trump administration has lost the public's sentiment on ICE and Border Patrol and immigration. Multiple polls confirm this. According to a Navigator poll recently put out, 57% of American people now view ICE unfavorably. Only 37% support, 20 points underwater. A CNN poll came out showing that 51% of American people believe ICE operations are making cities less safe. Only 31% believe ICE is making cities more safe, 20 points underwater.
They have lost the legal argument, and they are currently operating on borrowed time. Let us define the lie specifically. The lie is the claim that the Department of Homeland Security, under the leadership of people like Kristi Noem and the direction of Donald Trump, is functioning effectively, legally, and with the consent of the governed. The lie is found in the silence. It is found in the omission of facts. The administration presents their law and order operations as necessary for safety. They present their tariff policies as necessary for the economy. Here, play this clip.
Vice Chair Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Trump's tariffs continue to increase inflation. The recent producer price index came in hot. Economists predicted a 0.2% rise. It was 0.5%. And what that means is tariffs are now causing businesses to pass on these increased costs to consumers. And what is Trump focused on? Closing the Kennedy Center. Apparently, he couldn't even get Kid Rock to perform there.
However, we look to the record. We look to the statements made in the House Judiciary hearings. Representative Ted Lieu has identified the specific nature of this deception. The administration claims they are making cities safer. They claim they are protecting the homeland. But the claim goes further. Implicit in their actions is the assertion that they have the right to intimidate. They have the right to silence observation. They have the right to take a 5-year-old citizen and detain him. They have the right to shackle a woman in a bathroom with men. Here, play this clip.
We learned recently that ICE shackled a woman for 24 hours in a bathroom with 3 other men. The faucet didn't work, and when the men would go to a toilet, the woman would hide her face. We know that ICE also detained a 5-year-old citizen, Liam, who then got sick because of the horrible conditions at the detention facility, and a federal judge ordered the release because ICE is just flat out violating the law. It turns out
the lie is that this is normal. The lie is that this is legal. The lie is that this is what the American people want. When Donald Trump or his linked authorities in the Department of Homeland Security assert that they are enforcing the law, they are obscuring the reality that they are breaking it. They are obscuring the reality that they are violating the fundamental rights of citizens to observe their government. They are obscuring the reality of the economic damage they are inflicting. They are telling you to look away. They are telling you that what you see with your own eyes is not happening. That is the lie. We move now to forensic evidence. We do not deal in speculation. Here, play this clip.
That tends to make them more accountable because they're being watched, correct?
That's correct.
And even more important, people are gathering and preserving evidence that can be used in future cases. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, it protects the right to photograph and video police conduct, and because it's the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property.
We deal in the transcripts, we deal in the numbers, we deal in the sworn testimony and the statements placed into the congressional record. Exhibit A is the conduct of ICE and Border Patrol agents as described by Representative Ted Lieu. He describes a paramilitary force. Note the specific language used. This is not a description of standard police work. This is a description of a force that is poorly trained. This is a description of a force that cowardly wear masks. The evidence shows that this force was sent to states across America, specifically Minnesota. What was their objective? According to the source, the objective was to harass, intimidate, scare the people. This is the evidence of intent. The intent was not merely enforcement. The intent was psychological domination. Exhibit B is the specific documented abuse of civilians. This is where the administration's claim of law and order dissolves under scrutiny. Representative Lieu cites specific cases. We have the case of a woman shackled for 24 hours. She was not held in a standard cell. She was held in a bathroom. She was not held alone or with other women. She was held with 3 men. The evidence states that the faucet did not work. The evidence states that when the men had to use the toilet, the woman was forced to hide her face. This is forensic evidence of a violation of basic human dignity. It is evidence of a breakdown in protocol so severe it constitutes abuse. Exhibit C is the case of Liam. Liam is a 5-year-old. Liam is a United States citizen. The evidence shows that ICE detained this 5-year-old citizen. The evidence shows that he got sick because of the, quote, horrible conditions at the detention facility. This is not a clerical error. This is the detention of a U.S. citizen child by federal agents. A federal judge had to order his release. The fact that a federal judge had to intervene is evidence that the agency was acting outside the boundaries of the law. Exhibit D is the economic evidence. The administration claims their economic policies, specifically tariffs, are working. The forensic evidence proves the opposite. Representative Lieu cites the Producer Price Index. The economists predicted a 2% rise. The reality was 5%. The source describes this as hot, hot, hot. The evidence shows that tariffs are causing businesses to pass increased costs to consumers. Exhibit E is the public polling data. The administration claims a mandate. The evidence shows a collapse in support. A Navigator poll shows 57% of the American people view ICE unfavorably. Only 37% support it. That is 20 points underwater. A CNN poll shows 51% believe ICE operations are making cities less safe. Only 31% believe they are making cities safer. That is 20 points underwater. An AP poll shows 61% disapprove of the immigration policies. Only 38% approve. That is 23 points underwater. This evidence proves that the administration is operating against the will of the majority. It proves they are detaining citizens. It proves they are abusing detainees. It proves their economic policies are failing. Why does this happen? We must analyze the mechanisms of power and control. The administration uses these tactics to demand submission. Representative Lieu uses the phrase, bend the knee. This is the key to understanding the power dynamic. The administration sent paramilitary forces to Minnesota, not just to enforce immigration statutes, but to make the people yield. They want you to yield. They want you to accept that a 5-year-old citizen can be locked up. They want you to accept that a woman can be shackled in a bathroom. By normalizing these extreme abuses, they expand their control. If they can get away with that, they can get away with anything. The use of masks by agents is a power tactic. It removes accountability. It creates a faceless authority that cannot be identified by the citizen. It is designed to instill fear. When you cannot identify the agent, you cannot report the agent. That is a mechanism of control. The attack on institutions is another layer of this power analysis. Representative Lieu mentions the Kennedy Center. He describes it as a hallowed, amazing institution. The administration vandalized it by putting Donald Trump's name on it and then closed it. This is a symbolic assertion of power. It is an attempt to brand the government itself with the personality of the leader. It is an attempt to say, I own this. Even economic policy is a form of control. By imposing tariffs that drive up inflation, the administration forces businesses to react to their whims rather than market forces. But as the evidence shows, this control is backfiring. The producer price index rising to 5% is the market's rejection of that control. The ultimate goal of these power dynamics is to discourage dissent. They want the people to stay home. They want the people to stop filming. They want the legal observers to go away. We must address the defense. We look to the discourse surrounding these events to find the strongest arguments made by the administration's defenders. The defense argues that these agents are simply enforcing the laws passed by Congress. Commenters and supporters argue that ICE is enforcing existing laws. They argue that if people dislike the laws, they should change them, rather than criticize the enforcement. They point to the fact that previous administrations, including the Obama administration, also conducted deportations. They ask, why is current enforcement different? The defense argues that these individuals unlawfully entering the country are a serious threat to America. They argue that the protesters are provoking ICE agents. They claim that the administration is protecting sovereignty. They argue that absolute immunity is necessary for agents to do their dangerous jobs. Some explicitly state that Democrats will fight to protect illegal immigration because it benefits them politically. Let us dismantle this defense. The argument that agents are just enforcing the law collapses when the agents break the law. Representative Lieu is explicit. ICE is just flat out violating the law. There is no law passed by Congress that authorizes the shackling of a woman in a bathroom with 3 men for 24 hours. That is not law enforcement. That is a violation of human rights. There is no law passed by Congress that authorizes the detention of a 5-year-old United States citizen named Liam. When ICE detained Liam, they were not enforcing immigration law. They were violating the rights of a U.S. citizen. The defense that they are enforcing existing laws is null and void when a federal judge has to step in and order them to stop because they are acting illegally. The defense regarding previous administrations is a deflection. We are looking at the specific conduct occurring now. We are looking at the paramilitary force described in the source. We are looking at the specific intent to harass and intimidate. The defense regarding sovereignty and safety is dismantled by the polling data. The people living in these cities do not feel safer. The CNN poll shows 51% believe these operations make cities less safe. If the defense is public safety, the public has rejected that defense. The defense that protesters are provoking agents is dismantled by the Constitution. The source makes it clear. The First Amendment gives the American people the right to observe. Exercising a constitutional right is not a provocation. It is a right. We need to understand the law here. We need to understand what is actually protected. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Representative Lieu establishes this clearly in his questioning. It gives the American people the right to peacefully observe ICE operations. It gives the right to photograph. It gives the right to film. It gives the right to live stream. This is protected activity. It protects the right to gather information about what public officials do on public property. This is a critical legal concept. Public officials, paid by taxpayers, operating on public property, do not have an expectation of privacy from the people they serve. When people gather evidence, they are preserving it for future cases. This is the legal concept of accountability. There is also the statute of limitations. This is a crucial procedural rule in criminal and civil law. It determines how long the government has to bring charges after a crime has been committed. Representative Lieu states clearly, the statute of limitations for violations of federal law is 5 years. This means that an act committed today does not disappear tomorrow. The legal liability remains attached to the person who committed the act for 5 full years. An agent who violates the law today can be charged 3 years from now. They can be charged 4 years from now. The clock does not reset because an administration changes. The clock keeps ticking. We also must understand the concept of unlawful detention. Detaining a U.S. citizen like the 5-year-old Liam is a profound violation of due process. The Constitution protects citizens from being held without cause. When a federal judge orders a release, it is a legal finding that the detention was improper. We move to professional judgment on responsibility and fitness. Based on the sources, the judgment is clear. This administration and its appointees are unfit. Representative Lieu calls for the resignation or firing of Kristi Noem. He states she needs to resign or she needs to be fired. Why? Because under her leadership, the Department of Homeland Security has killed Americans. The source notes that ICE and Border Patrol interior operations are out of control. They killed 2 civilians in a single month. When an agency is described as out of control by a member of the Judiciary Committee, that is a judgment of professional failure. It indicates a breakdown in command. It indicates a failure of oversight. The judgment extends to the president. The source states that Donald Trump royally screwed up the Kennedy Center. It states that his tariffs are driving inflation. It states that he has lost the public sentiment. Abraham Lincoln said, "Public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed." By this standard, the Trump administration's immigration enforcement has already failed. They are operating without the consent of the governed. They are operating on a deficit of legitimacy. The professionals involved, the agents acting as a paramilitary force, are described as poorly trained. This is a judgment on the hiring, training, and management standards of the department. They are not meeting the professional standards required of federal law enforcement. Who is making these claims? Who is providing this evidence? We rely on the authority of the sources. First, we have Representative Ted Lieu. He is the vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus. He is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. He is a former prosecutor. He is a veteran. When he speaks about the statute of limitations, he is speaking with the authority of a legal expert and a sitting lawmaker. Second, we have the collective authority of the community leaders mentioned in the source. These are the people on the ground in Minnesota. They reported that over 20,000 Minnesotans have been trained as legal observers. This represents a massive, organized body of witnesses. Third, we have the authority of the polling institutions, Navigator Research, CNN, the Associated Press. These are major independent data gathering organizations. Their methodology provides the statistical proof of the administration's failure. Fourth, we have the federal judiciary. The source references a federal judge who ordered the release of the 5-year-old child. The authority of the court supersedes the authority of the ICE agents. The court's ruling is the definitive proof of the illegality of the detention. Fifth, we have the economic data from the Producer Price Index. This is hard data. It is not political spin. It is the measurement of inflation that proves the failure of the tariff policy. Where does the accountability come from? It comes from the institutions that are still functioning. It comes from the Department of Justice. While the current administration may not prosecute its own, the institution of the DOJ survives beyond any single presidency. It comes from the courts. The federal judge who released Liam exercised institutional accountability. The courts are the venue where the evidence gathered by those 20,000 legal observers will be used. Representative Lieu notes that people are gathering and preserving evidence that can be used in future cases. It comes from Congress. The hearings themselves are a form of accountability, calling Mr. Mayel to testify, questioning him on the record, getting him to admit that the First Amendment protects the observers. This establishes a legislative record that can be used in future proceedings. It comes from the impeachment proceedings mentioned as a remedy. If officials like Kristi Noem do not resign, the source states that impeachment proceedings need to proceed. This is the ultimate constitutional check on executive failure, and it comes from the voters. The source explicitly links these actions to the, quote, midterm elections and the, quote, new presidential elections. The accountability mechanism is the ballot box, driven by the public sentiment that has turned against the administration. We end with the procedural consequences. This is not about hope. This is not about hype. This is about what the law dictates. The consequence of the statute of limitations is that the window for prosecution remains open. Representative Lieu's guarantee is specific. I guarantee you a future administration will. This means that agents who committed abuses, who shackled detainees improperly, who detained citizens unlawfully, are legally exposed. They are vulnerable to criminal and civil liability for 5 years from the date of the offense. The consequence of the polling numbers is political defeat. When an agency is 20 points underwater, the political support necessary to sustain its funding and its operations evaporates. The consequence of the economic data is continued inflation. If the tariffs remain, the cost will continue to be passed to consumers. That is a procedural economic reality. But the most significant procedural consequence is the accumulation of evidence. Every video filmed by a legal observer is a potential exhibit in a trial. Every report of abuse is a potential count in an indictment. Representative Lieu told the agents in the administration, "You need to know the Trump administration has already lost." This is the procedural reality of a democracy. When you lose the people, you eventually lose the power. The files are being built, the witnesses are being trained, the evidence is being preserved, and the clock on the statute of limitations is ticking. That is the news.